Hello, science research sophomores. Mr. DeBello here, and I'm ready to jump into your first summer check-in right now. And this one's going to be all about telling a story, how to write in science research, and how that's going to inform our summer reading process. So to kind of go through what we're doing today, first we're going to talk about how you're going to choose what to read next after you guys have read your 3 articles. We're going to talk about telling a story a little bit. And we're going to talk about how we're going to write a review of literature in the first quarter of the school year and how that end goal is going to inform what we're doing now. After that, we're going to talk about what is due. I'm going to try to outline everything as clearly as I can for you guys to make sure that the expectations are super clear. We'll talk about our end goal for the summer. So the expectation there is super clear. So when you walk in September, you know what you're doing. And then we'll wrap up with a little advice from a great scientist. So first off, I want to address this. I'm sure there's a lot of you going like, more reading, we got to read more. It's like, I know, it's exhausting, it's tiring, but this is the most important part of science. And realistically, you guys are not yet scientists. We've got to get you to that level. And the way we're going to do that is by reading. You guys are going to become experts in your field. You're going to be able to have intelligent conversations with people who are doing this research for real very, very soon. But what we've got to do to get there is we've got to do reading. So hopefully you've picked a topic that you find enjoyable so this doesn't feel like work so much here, and we can get into it. So I know it can be a grind, but we've got to push through it here, guys. So let's talk about what articles we're going to be jumping into next. So the first thing we've got to do now is pick a direction. The direction and topic that you choose to explore right now is going to be the topic that you stick with your whole sophomore year. Now, you can bail out on this topic through sophomore year if you truly are so miserable. However, I really don't think it's worth doing. I think it's important to kind of stick with this topic so you can really build up that background info and have something that you can go through a truly informed science research process with throughout the entirety of next year. That said, this does not need to be the topic that you go into your internship with in your junior and senior years. You can totally change at the end of sophomore year and reach out to potential mentors in different fields. But it does help if this topic is something that you're interested in, because like we were talking about, you are going to become an expert in this very narrow field. The next thing we've got to do is pursue a gap in research. So what I want you guys to do is address the next steps of the articles that you've read. You've read these articles, and most certainly in the articles you've read, they've talked about the limitations as to why they can't do certain things and what those next steps might be. So you need to determine what there still is to learn in your field and let that inform what you're going to read next. So as you're kind of reading this and getting into a topic, what that next step is should be what the next thing you read is. So what you're going to be doing here is picking some new articles. And by our next deadline, which is outlined on Google Classroom, I would like you guys to have read and annotated 6 articles, and this is the important part, in your field. So many of you were back and forth between 2 different topics. At this point, you should have read articles on each topic. One of them was probably more enjoyable than the other, so it's time to choose that field and go down that rabbit hole. All right? So if you've done that, though, maybe you've only read 1 or 2 articles in this field. So now it's time to buckle down and get some more articles so you can get to 6 articles in the field that you have chosen by our next deadline here. So these articles may or may not come from your original list, right? You guys have that list of articles that you found of 5. You might be throwing some of those to the trash, and that is okay, right? So If you have stuff that truly is the next step, that is foundational to your topic, go ahead, read that article, count it towards the 6 that you need to have done by this deadline. But, maybe you've learned some new stuff in that article or 2 that you've read in your field, and you think you need to go in, a completely different direction in terms of what you're searching for in articles, and that's great too. Just in terms of reminding you of what we're looking for research-wise, these need to be scholarly journal articles that are 2020 or newer. We're still looking to see what that cutting edge is. There is a time and place for older articles, most certainly, right? But that's going to come a little bit later. So again, the articles you're reading should do the 2 following things. They should answer the questions that you have in your field. So in that field that you're reading, there are questions that the whole field has. These articles should be answering those questions, okay? And they should be deepening your knowledge as you start to become an expert in this field. So just as a reminder, your goal this summer is to find a gap in research that exists. So this is a real gap in research, something no scientist has looked into before and no one has done the research on yet. That's what we've got to find. And to do that, you've really got to become an expert in your field, and you've got to ask questions and then search for those questions. Okay? So let's talk now about telling a story and hopefully start framing our work for next year to help you get into better habits for searching for some articles. So let's talk about the structure of a review of literature. So this is a review of literature is a paper that you write. And actually, it's part of a paper. It's part of a research paper. And it is really the introduction of that research paper. What you do in a review of literature is you present the big picture. So let's say we're talking about lake eutrophication. This is when, I'm not a biologist here, but this is when all of the oxygen leaves the water. So the dissolved oxygen in the water can't be used by the fish and life in that area. And all of the life, the plant life, the fish start to die. So we're going to talk about big picture. Why is this bad, right? How widespread is this issue of eutrophication? Okay. Then you're going to be an expert in your field. So now you're going to talk about the specifics of lake eutrophication, right? You're going to get into the nuts and bolts of this, saying like, hey, this lake has these properties which are leading to a specific type of eutrophication. So we're getting into those specifics. And then finally, we're going to sell a gap in research. We're going to present this to somebody, right? Saying, okay, you've heard all these things about it, the big picture significance, right? We're talking about all of the facts and important things that matter. And because of that, this deserves our time for researching. So you're basically proposing like, hey, I want to do this research. Maybe I need to get a whole bunch of money, right? I'm proposing that this is a truly worthwhile thing to investigate. So that's what we've got to do in our review of literature. These are really the 3 pieces to it. So what does this look like? What I want you guys to do is go to your Google Classroom page. In the Program Resources folder, this should be the top thing. If you go to like the classwork page, to say Program Resources folder at the top, this folder has a ton of stuff in it, not much of which you have to use yet. You guys have already gone in there to get your spreadsheets. But in there's a sample papers folder. I want you to open that up and then open up the sample sophomore paper. So this paper was written by a sophomore, I believe in 2019. So this was a while ago, and she was a very successful student, but this paper is most certainly, it's not perfect. And I want you to understand that as you go through. It's not perfect, but there's one thing that she does exceptionally well in this, and that's the structure of that review of literature. So what I would like you guys to do is go in and read just the review of literature. So you can see here the title up there. that says review of literature, that's bold and centered. You're going to read that all the way up till where you get to the purpose. So why don't you pause the video and go read that section. All right, pause it. All right, we're back. Yeah, that was a long read. It is pretty dense. She was doing a pretty dense medical topic. So there's a lot of stuff in there, a lot of, blood-brain barrier, CNS, all these abbreviations that we needed to get to know. But hopefully you took some time to read through it and understand at least the basics of what was going on there. And what I want to do now is kind of talk through it. What she does the best is creates a funnel. And this is our goal in a review of literature. At the top of the funnel, we want our big picture. So in general, in that first paragraph, she just talks in general about autoimmune diseases. She talks about MS and how it impacts people, why it's difficult to treat. She talks about what the current issues are. So we're like, all right, I'm sold. MS is an issue, right? Then what we do is we get into peripheral inflammation next. So this talks about how the blood-brain barrier plays a role in MS proliferation, and we can't treat it because maybe our treatments can't get through that blood-brain barrier. Okay, so now we're kind of getting into the more specifics as to really why it's difficult to treat. We're getting into the science of it a bit more. Okay, so now this next one is kind of interesting because it's based on what she's learned in her reading. So right now, this might have been her first articles that she just searched up MS, right? These first two parts, all the info there is coming from those articles. But now we get into the blood CSF barrier. So this is something she might have come across, right? It's a specific vector that MS may use to cross the blood-brain barrier, right? So this is something that might have come up in just one of the papers. And then she explored it further by saying, oh, this blood CSF barrier thing is interesting, right? I'm going to search up articles on that. So this is why we're talking about this right now. You guys are searching for new articles, right? And it's coming from that knowledge that you've gotten in those previous articles. Okay. Now, as we get closer to this next one is actually really interesting. Okay. She talks about extracellular vesicles and as a way of stopping autoimmune diseases from crossing the blood-brain barrier. This is interesting because this is not the papers that she was citing here are not papers that would come up if she just went into Google Scholar and searched multiple sclerosis and all of its issues, right? So if you're just typing MS research into Google Scholar because you want to do something with MS, you're going to miss this part. And this is what separates a really good research student from a normal research student. So if you won't need to get to that next level, this is what we've got to do here. So we found, hey, this extracellular vesicle thing is treating a different autoimmune disease, right? And it's getting through the blood-brain barrier. Do you guys see what that gap in research is already? Before we even get to it, you know what that gap in research is, and that's the mark of good writing, right? We're going to use medication that use extracellular vesicles to treat MS specifically, which has not been done before. So this is a great funnel. We start out with really general information. Then we get into a really, really specific gap in research at the end that really sounds like a great thing to invest time and money into, right? Okay, here's a new way of potentially treating MS. Okay, so what I want you guys to do as part of this next benchmark, along with the reading, is to start creating your funnel. I want you guys to map it out. I want you to create a graphic organizer of some sort with your funnel. Like, what are the pieces to the puzzle here leading to your gap in research? And I understand you guys have not read that much yet, okay? Which means I don't intend for you to do this right now. The moment you're watching this video, it is not time to start mapping this out at all. I want you to read those 3, 4, 5 more articles now. I want you to read more articles to now get to a point where you can kind of start understanding this funnel. The reason we're talking about it now is I kind of want it in your brain. want you thinking about this process and where you need to go as you look for new articles to build your knowledge base. Okay, so this is the second part of our benchmark. So with that, let's talk about exactly what is due. Okay, couple things. Spreadsheet. So I need to see that your spreadsheet is updated by this due date. Okay, so I have the links to your folders. I'm going to be going in your folders and I'm going to be checking your spreadsheet, particularly the library tab of your spreadsheet. In that tab, you guys are now going to have those new articles. You've added them as PDFs into your Google Drive, right? And we've got our articles there in our spreadsheet. So I'm going to be checking that on the date of our next benchmark, which is not August 3rd. I recognize there is a typo there. This is not August 3rd for you guys. So please check Google Classroom. You should have 6 articles at this point going into that spreadsheet. You should develop a preliminary gap in research, okay, and start writing it out in your funnel, okay, and you should have your funnel kind of written out. You could do this any format you want. You want to do it on paper and upload a picture, that's fine. If you want to do it, using Google Slides, that's probably the best way. Make yourself a little graphic organizer in Google Slides. You can do that as well. You want to do a graphic organizer in Google Docs, do that as well. So what I want from you guys is, again, let's read 6 articles by our due date here. Let's get them all in our spreadsheet. Let's develop a gap in research based on what we're learning here. And let's start putting it into a funnel and make a visual graphic organizer. This might be very overwhelming for you as you watch this video right now. I know there's a lot of extenuating circumstances, a lot of things going on over the summer for you guys. You've got camps, you've got all these things. That's okay. As I told you, you have an extension on all of these benchmarks. The only thing is that it needs to get done by the time we get back in school. Okay? So you guys need to communicate with me. Don't ask for an extension. You have it. You have the extension. Instead, email me and tell me when you are going to finish this by. More than likely, I'll be like, that sounds like a great plan. Good job, kid. Have a good summer. Sometimes I'll be like, are you sure that's giving you enough time? Because as you've watched in this video, this will take time. This is a process that takes time. There's no way to shortcut it. You cannot crank this out in a couple days. You've got to read these articles. You've got to understand these articles. And based on that, you've got to go find new articles. So make sure that you're giving yourself that time. And if you are not able to finish this by the due date on Classroom, you need to reach out. Let's talk now about our end of summer goals. What am I expecting by the end of summer, just to make sure we're all on the same page? We're going to have 10 articles read and annotated in your field with the hours logged and all of those articles added to your spreadsheet. Okay. You're going to have identified a gap in research that we're going to refine over the next 2 videos. We're going to talk about that process and refining it. And we're going to have a review of literature outline. We're going to start outlining each paragraph of that review of literature. We don't have to worry about those things yet. Not part of this video, but this is our end of summer goals. Okay. So with that, I want to leave you guys with a final thought from a brilliant scientist. Remember, it's about the journey, not the destination. Be a little better today than you were yesterday. So this is not a normal class. You can't do things last minute in this class because we are expecting you to be an expert in your field, and that cannot happen overnight. So you need to be putting in the time. Now, if you're sitting there feeling guilty because you haven't been putting in the time and it hasn't been a priority for you, right? Then be a little better today than you were yesterday. Each day, just try to be a little bit better. If you do that, even if it's just a little bit, every day that's going to add up. So let's keep working towards this goal, guys. Let's chip away at it. Keep reading that article, even if it's a paragraph at a time as you get through it. Let's chip away and get this done. If you guys recall, in class, we talked about the advice from the current sophomores, and all of them said, you need to do the work. You can't put it off to the last minute, and that this summer work is important. It's going to set you up for next year. Let's do a good job now. Let's be kind to future you and get this done. Please keep in touch. You guys have questions, concerns, y'all have phones. Email me. Let me know how everything's going. Let me know if you need to adjust your schedule and your timelines. Okay? So, guys, have a great summer. Can't wait to see you guys when we get in September. And enjoy the process.